Welcome to The Human Code, the podcast where technology meets humanity, and the future is shaped by the leaders and innovators of today. I'm your host, Don Finley, inviting you on a journey through the fascinating world of tech, leadership, and personal growth. Here, we delve into the stories of visionary minds who are not only driving technological advancement, but also embodying the personal journeys and insights that inspire us all. Each episode, we explore the intersections where human ingenuity meets the cutting edge of technology, unpacking the experiences, challenges, and triumphs that define our era. So, whether you're a tech enthusiast, an inspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the human narratives behind the digital revolution, you're in the right place. Welcome to The Human Code.
Don, it's a pleasure to be back with you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast again. We had the opportunity to touch on Bill's rules the last time I was on, and a lot of people have come back with questions. What are they? How do they work? What did you do to be successful with them? So I appreciate your inviting me on to discuss them. Before we do that, I wanted to say there's a lot of business philosophies floating around out there in books and LinkedIn. And, people look at my record and they say, well, you've been at a lot of companies. What they don't pick up on is that I have had the privilege of leading the number one organization in many of those companies, dating all the way back to Tivoli IBM, where I started the North American state and local government group from start. At the end of the second year, it was the number one organization in Tivoli, North America, when that company was the most productive sales company per capita in the software industry. Following that, they put me in at the Southeast Commercial region. I had to do a 10% cutback, restructure four regions. We went from last place to first place, and the region finished the number one in North American IBM software group. At PeopleSoft, I was hired to run the East Commercial region. After a year, I was promoted to run North American state and local government, one of the largest organizations in the company. I was intimately involved in the hostile takeover with Oracle. And following that, Oracle asked me to do the successful integration of PeopleSoft Public Sector, about a $500 million organization, into Oracle Public Sector. So I've seen both sides of the acquired and the hostage tribe, as well as the tribe that did the winning. At SAP, I went in and fixed a process industries division that had been decimated. That went from last place to first, although I will be perfectly honest and say that was in large measure due to Bill McDermott, the CEO, doing a large renewal wrap and roll with a petrochemical company. But it certainly shows an ongoing streak. Then I went to Informatica. I was designated within the first 8 months a top 1% critical employee with over 3,000 employees of the company. Happened the second year. Had the fastest growing organization worldwide in Informatica. And at Cloudera, I went over and ran their public sector through the IPO, the state and local group under Sean Brown, who is now the vice president of global at InStream. They were growing at 300% a year, and Sean's still a friend. And then finally, at AWS, my dear friend David Levy hired me to set up an organization from scratch to run their relationships with the top 25 federal systems integrators. I had to hire an entire team, and that organization, from groundbreaking at the end of a year and a half, was deemed the fastest growing organization within AWS public sector worldwide. So point being that, you see a lot of people pitching philosophies, and whenever I hear them do it, I always ask, does it work? Where has it worked? Does it work consistently over time? And does it scale? And when it comes to Bill's rules, the answers to each of these is yes. Anybody listening to the podcast for the first time, that's why it might be of interest to anybody in the business or the software technology world. Now, the second question is, well, why did I write it all down? I did that for three reasons. Number one, if you're going to be a leader, you have to know who you are. You have to understand what's important to you, why do you do what you do, and then you have to communicate it to your team. They see that in the military all the time. The enlisted folks can pick an officer that they really respect, and it could be anybody from an ensign to a captain. But it's not about the rank or the office. It's about the individual in the leadership position. And to do that, you have to demonstrate an understanding not just of technology and what you know, but also your concern for the organization. And secondly, the difference between a leader and a manager is that a good manager, can take 2 plus 2 and make it equal 4. And good managers can do that year after year. But a good leader takes 2 plus 2 and makes it 6 or 7. And that's where I've been successful. And you see the 150, 200, 300% growth. That's the difference between management and leadership. And finally, the reason I wrote it down is because I strive for behavioralism versus operant conditioning. And what does that mean? So, when you're dealing with children, you tell them exactly what needs to be done, and you say you have to do it this way, and you say you're going to get punished if you don't, because it's probably going to get hurt or they're not going to behave correctly as children. When you're dealing with professionals that have been doing this 7, 10, 15, or 20 years, then what you want to do is you want to unlock their potential. Unfortunately, a lot of companies, particularly those that are run by former technologists, they employ the operant conditioning approach. They do it my way. And that's why most companies never get better than 60% engagement from their employees. My experience has been that by laying out what's important to me and what I feel is important to the organization, I'm employing behavioralism. It's culminated in one of my rules, which says I don't want to manage anything. I seek to unleash a sales force. Big difference. And so when you articulate what's important to you, how you're going to act, and what you expect of an organization, and you set the expectation that we will be number one, then you have a greater chance of getting people's engagement because they understand you care about them, they understand you, and they understand what their role is in the greater scheme of things. And when you achieve that, that's when growth comes very easy, right? Assuming you've got a horse under you in the form of good technology, then the ability to grow the business becomes very easy. So those are all the reasons that I wrote down Bill's rules. That last one is particularly important. I've done a lot of turnaround work. I come in and the first thing they say, who's the new boss and why should we follow him or should we be, dusting off our resumes? And if you can freeze people in place long enough and fix this processes around them, you can get great players to stay and you can improve the C or B players, make them B or A players. And again, I've seen this consistently over time, over companies, over different technology, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Bill, I absolutely love it. Once again, thank you for being on. And I got to say, what a great introduction to your rules as well. And so I'd love just to drop right into the first one. What makes this one the greatest? What's the best part about it? And also, I love that it follows on from the question of why. It's a great lesson that I've learned from Simon Sinek about starting with why, and then the what and the how kind of flow from there. But you are the who. And I bring that up because there is the Benjamin Hardy has a book called 10x is easier than 2x. And one of the greatest rules in there is that it's the who, not the what or the how, that kind of defines it. And so I think you're really, celebrating both the why, but also like how your rules are really shaping out, have helped to scale organizations. It's been implemented successfully over the course of time. And like you said, it's a really great place to start. So I'm once again going to hand it over to you to.
You're correct about the who, right? I mean, it's axiomatic that the best technology doesn't always win. Right? Beta had better technology than VHS, but it all comes down to execution. And the other reason I focus on Bill's rules is, the private equity guys, the VC guys, they're happy if 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 investments work. Well, that's great if you're working for one of those companies in the one or the two out of the 10, but the other 80% of the people are spending their lives trying to make something work that perhaps won't, not because they don't have the technology under them, but because they don't have the management, the leadership, the vision, and the execution. Right. And that just frustrates me. And so one of the things I do when I come in is try to reorient people's philosophies and strategy. So we'll drop into the rules. So the first one is tell the truth. And I'm not your mother. You should tell the truth anyway. But in a business perspective, I tell my team, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And if you go into a customer and you try to bluff them and they ask you a question, if you don't know, just I don't know. I'll find out. I'll get you a good answer. But if you don't do it correctly, you've sacrificed not only your credibility, but that of the companies. So tell the truth that way. Number two, tell the truth to me, right? Our destinies are tied. I am not going to be successful without you. And as a result, if you tell me the truth, I can apply my background, my experiences, my contacts, whatever to your benefit. But if I don't know what the truth is, if I don't understand the ground truth, if you say I need a 70% deal in this transaction, but the fact of the matter is we're not aligned with the decision maker, we've just put a 70% transaction out on the street without any hope of success. So tell me, I don't know the CEO. I don't know who the decision maker is. Tell me the truth and I'll help you. And a third one is tell me the truth is we have to fix the right problems and sales knows the problems. Now this is directed both at other companies as well as our own company. Salespeople do not exist to generate revenue. What we pay them to do is to go into another company or a government agency, look at the strategy, the structure, the personnel, the execution, and figure out how do we materially improve the operations of that organization as a result of the implementation of our product or service, right? Now, if you do that, then you're going to be able to sell your product or service, provide an ROI, and generate revenue for your company. But it comes down to the ability to look at a target company or government agency and figure all that out. And experienced salespeople, 20 years of experience, they can do that in a couple of weeks. But the reverse is true. Tell me what is wrong with our company that is inhibiting your success. And so many companies, I get brought in to do sales consulting or execution consulting, and they don't want to look at, what is it they're not doing correctly? And they don't want to listen to the salespeople. They think, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. So that issue of tell the truth. So oftentimes you can improve the execution of the company so that you are VHS and not Betamax, so that you maximize all the time, effort, and money that you have put into your product by listening to your salespeople and making sure that your execution is that much better. So that's what comes down to tell me the truth is so important.
I love the authenticity of that. And like, there is no other way but to be yourself and to also make sure that you're actually like reading, not just reading the room, but being aware of the situation that you're in.
Correct. And having some humility and saying, I don't know. These salespeople touch different parts of the organization at different levels. If there's something that is getting in their way, it's my obligation to get it out of their way. Or if it's, maybe it's something that should be in their way, I need to know that too. But if we have an honest conversation, and that's why one of the rules is don't shoot the messenger. Like you got some bad news, let me know, right? As we say in sales, bad news doesn't get better. It's like fish, doesn't get better with age. So let me know and we can fix it quickly.
It's a great analogy. What's the second rule on the list then?
The second rule is one that people have come back to me for years now. It's probably people's favorite rule. It is work with people you know, like, and trust. Go hire them. So there have been various times in my career where I've had to do a quick turnaround or, I've had to grow an organization quickly. And what I've said to the sales team is I said, go back and look at the org charts for the last 2 or 3 companies at which you have worked and find those 1 or 2 people that you would like to work with again. And let's talk to them. And the rationale there is we have somebody in our own team that says, I would like to have this individual join my team. And if somebody's bought into the organization that I'm running, then they want to make that materially better. They're not going to go hire somebody they don't like, don't trust, don't think is any good. So they're going to bring great DNA into the company. That's number one. Number two, if and when that person gets to the company, then they have a trusted partner that will help them come up to speed quickly, right? Getting a sales team, reducing that time to value for a sales organization is critical, particularly in a turnaround situation. And so that's where looking at how I can shorten that. And then third, and perhaps most importantly, is you're building an organization that has trust, right? They trust each other. They recognize that if Sue out in Washington State wins a deal, that's going to help me down in Florida because I can use that as a reference. And, Bob down in Los Angeles got a deal, so it's going to resonate up in Sacramento, what have you. That building that trust where the sales team is in it as a team is probably the single greatest reason that I've seen my organizations function as the number one organization in a company time after time, year after year, company after company, because you build that ethos of being a team. And it goes back to who you hire, how quickly you get them on. Do they buy into the company? Do they feel valued? Do they have a team around them that they trust? Do they understand the value they offer and how that value is imparted to other parts of the organization? Work with people you know, like, and trust. Go hire them.
It's a fantastic role. We employ something similar at Findustries where we only work with friends. And so we don't have to start out as friends, but that's the the offer that we make to everybody that we work with.
Like I say, so many companies don't do well, and it's just because they either leadership or other people, they have their eyes on the prize. They've got, dollar bill signs in their eyes, and they don't stop to think, how do I build a great company? Yes, it's technology, absolutely, that's foundational, but there's a reason Dell and Cisco and IBM in the old days and some newer companies are doing well, and it's not just because they got great technology. It's because they function as a team.
It's such a great lesson. So, on the opposite side of the coin, is there anybody to avoid?
Yeah, well, that's the next rule, which is what I like to say, the no asshole rule is always in effect. Now, we've all had folks that we perhaps didn't like working for more than others. I've had one or two that were just absolute record breakers, but there is a book written by a Professor Robert Sutton at the Stanford Business School by that name. It started out as a paper, and it was so well received that he actually wrote a book around it. He did all the academic research necessary to demonstrate why an environment which is run by a decent person, not an abusive person, actually empirically delivers much better results than the alternative, where you have a screamer or somebody that's, in some way not a good person. And so that's why it's a reminder to myself, first and foremost, know yourself. The troops are always watching. You don't get to kick the dog. You don't get to scream at people because you had a bad day. You don't get to shout at people because somebody lost a deal. I figure if somebody lost a deal or we did something poorly, that's on me. I'm the leader. I own it. Right? I own it. I own the dirt. I own the accounts. I own the people. I have a responsibility for all the outcomes. So you don't get to do that. And again, when you set up that ethos where people know you have their backs, you have their best intentions at heart, then it's very important. Then they will deliver again, as my career has demonstrated. They'll deliver far in excess of the sum of the parts. But you have to have that rule both for yourself as well as there's usually a few bad actors when you get into an organization. And as you know, one bad apple can spoil a whole bunch very quickly. So you have to identify them quickly, counsel them or move them out, whatever the case may be. But that's something that has to be done to avoid destroying that ethos of teamwork in the organization.
It is absolutely brilliant. And I got to tell you, we all can probably point out those people that have made life difficult or made it so you don't even want to get up in the morning to kind of like make that work happen. So it's a great one to have. I'm looking at the next one, and I got to say, it's a nice little transition into the individual contributor versus the manager. And so I'd love just to open the doors as far as how you see that leadership playing out into the tactile management piece.
This is one that Charles Wang, the CEO of Computer Associates, said many years ago, and of course there's a checkered past there, but nonetheless, I think the point is true. He said managers are paid to make decisions. Nothing kills an organization faster than indecision. So, in my career, I can contrast two companies. There's been a number of companies where the CEO, everybody wants to be Larry Ellison, right? Early stage companies, everybody sees themselves as Larry Ellison. And frankly, at Oracle, they do push things down. But if your last name is not Ellison, you don't make a lot of big decisions there, right? It works for them. God love them. Congratulations. There's no arguing with the success. But when you have some of these smaller companies where the CEO has to interview every salesperson as the SC, has to select the color of that's going to be used on a presentation, everything slows down and people, as they say, they work to the contract. They wait until they're told what to do. And then you're only going to be as good as the scale available from one individual's time calendar. So the idea of managers are paid to make decisions and indecision kills an organization faster than a decision is the idea. We did it very well. Craig Conway did it very well at PeopleSoft. There was very clear lines of responsibility, levels of responsibilities that, a director has X amount of authority to discount to 15%. A vice president has 25 or 30%. Anything above has to go up and written. The business moved very quickly. But even more than that, what it did was it communicated to the organization, we trust your judgment. You're here. We hired you. We trained you. You represent this company. We expect great things from you. We trust your judgment. Move out. And that's where the underlying discussion is. It's not just indecision and people standing around waiting for somebody to make the decision. The thing that really kills it is the unspoken communication is, we don't trust any of you. you're not smart enough, you don't have good judgment, whatever the case may be. So, okay, people stand around and wait to be told what to do. And in a market which, turns itself over about every 18 months, it's just you cannot afford to stand there and wait. You have to hire good people, train them, empower them, trust them, and move out as fast as you can.
We're working in a world of flatter organizations. And so if you have to make the decision for 8 to 12 people, there's not time in the day for you to actually do any thinking of your own or planning any strategy. So, like, being able to delegate and decision making delegation is incredibly important. So, I love that you've highlighted this in your roles as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked for 3 or 4 companies where the CEO might have 15 to 25 direct reports. Whereas, you compare that with Jeff Bezos, you can't argue with his success. I think he's 5 or 6 direct reports, and most big companies have 5 or 6 span of control, about 5 or 6. And Jeff would say, If I make 4 good decisions in a day, that's a good day." Right? But he recognizes the impact and the importance of making the right decision. So he tees up all the information he needs at the right levels, makes that decision, and the organization moves forward. Contrast that with waiting around 3 weeks to find out, what color are we going to use for the demos when we get to the Gartner conference in 6 months.
How do you determine what is the right level of delegation and decision making to push down to your managers and your frontline support?
At the start, it is a very subjective thing. You have to look at, what's the relative expertise of the individual with you're dealing. How fast is the business moving? What are the legal implications if somebody makes a bad decision? And then the main thing is you have to just document it all very clearly, so everybody clearly understands. Here's what's available to you as a director. Here's what's available to you as an RVP. Here's what. So everybody clearly understands, and then you'd be surprised how well it works. And if people have a question on the incidentals, they don't hesitate to ask, right? And as an executive, it frees you up to manage the complicated situations, to manage the you know ethical issues that may arise, or to handle the larger transactions, because you have confidence that everybody beneath you is doing what should be done. Singles, doubles, and triples matter. Getting those little deals in. As I like to tell my organization, I'll get the top 1 or 2 deals in a quarter closed, but I need you guys to get the singles, doubles, and triples done, because those matter.
Which is kind of leading on to the growth philosophy that you have. I'd love to touch base on that one as well.
One rule there is growth is fine, but if you're not growing faster than the market and faster than your competition, you are dying less slowly. So I have seen this many times where a company will have great technology, they'll have great product, and actually pretty good execution. They think that, hey, if we can grow at 20% per year, that's fantastic. And I've seen this recently. Unfortunate thing is, if the market's growing at 40%, they're losing 20% per year of potential. And so if you fail to recognize that, the scale is, you're not scaling fast enough, you lose your market opportunity. This is a conversation I have with a lot of my friends. We see this in companies where, there is the company will come out with a great piece of product. It's, 5, 7, 10 years ahead of their commercial viability. But all of a sudden that wave is building. And if you don't catch the wave, it passes you by. And I saw that with one company. They were in the upper right quadrant for Gartner. Brilliant technology. 2 years later, they're still there, but Forrester came out with a similar research. There's 11 different companies doing what they do. Classic situation. And if you miss that, should have been $1 billion company. If you miss that window, you're not getting it back. And so that's what that touch to is great. It's fine if you're not growing faster than the market and the competition, you're dying less slowly. When you get to scale, when you're an IBM, a Microsoft, PeopleSoft, something like that, and you have substantial market share, it's a different discussion where you're trying to grow at the top, but now you're trying to grow your base. So but if you're setting out and you're coming into the market, you have few marquee customers, you want to grow, you better make sure that the company is growing at least as fast as your market opportunity, or you're getting left behind.
How does this play into individual growth, like on your team and the places where your direct reports are, growing their own field?
One of the best things you can do for a rep is take some territory away. There's a whole discussion about that, but if you're growing quickly and you have a talented sales reps, they've got 3 or 4 different opportunities that are in play for a quarter. It is far better to take 1 or 2 deals away, hand them to somebody else on the team, work out some splits so there's a reason for everybody to cooperate, because otherwise, if you leave them all with 1 rep, they risk not getting any of them closed. There's just too much work to get done. So the moral of the story is not just sales, it speaks to how do you scale an organization in the face of growth like that? And that's where, a firm hand on the tiller and understanding of, the business, so you understand how much 4-quarter rolling funnel do we have? How busy are the sales reps? How many people are making the number? Has it scaled up or scaled down? Do we need to add people? Do we need to come down some people because we don't have the opportunity? So having that firm grip on the business on a day-to-day, and that's where, first line managers are probably one of the toughest jobs in the company, but that's where they're invaluable. And that's where empowering them to make those calls like, look, I got too much business here. I need to add somebody, or Bill, we're not getting enough leads. We're not generating enough quote funnel. There's no way we hit the quota for the quarter or the year. Listening to them.
I think that's a great way to kind of like balance the work and then balance people's growth, because I can tell you from my own history, there's been times when I've tried to do too much, right? And it's, at the detriment to myself and also at the detriment to the organization. So amazing. But let's run into accountability.
So accountability. So the rule is, as a manager, your decisions affect people's ability to pay their mortgage, their 401k, their health care, and their child's 529 plan. Decide accordingly. Again, it speaks to how you build a team. It speaks to what I expect of managers. The company's going to be just fine, right? When you are managing an organization, you have to communicate a sense of concern around the totality of the employee experience, right? It's not just we're going to make money, but I want to make more money for me, so I'm going to screw you out of a particular opportunity. You only have to do that once, and the message goes out to the entire organization, and you torpedo all the teamwork that you've been trying to build. That's the other key thing is it's great to have these values and operate according to them, but it only takes 1 or 2 situations where they're not adjudicated correctly on behalf of an employee that the employees look at it and say, "Yeah, okay, this is all nonsense. I'm not gonna believe it anymore. I'm gonna go somewhere else, or I'm gonna go back to working at 50 or 60% engagement," right? And so that's why I remind managers, look, if the tie, as they say in baseball, the tie goes to the runner, okay? The employee goes, so if we need to, double comp a deal because somebody did 2 people worked really hard, if we can find a way to make it a win for the employees, you're going to be much more successful than trying to steal that last penny. The founder of Virgin Airlines said the customer's not the most important person, the employee is the most important person. And that's testimony to the importance of this rule, because you're reliant on your employees to trust to take care of your customers. You're not there all the time. And if you steal the last penny, you know, uh, decide always in the company's favor, then you're going to have employees that understand exactly where they are. And one of my personal business heroes is Michael Dell, right? I mean, Michael Dell was the first one, I believe, that really demonstrated how giving options to all of your employees and making sure everybody shares in the success of the company yields not just success, but a great company. Dell for many years has been a tremendous company. And I remember when he first went public and they were saying, yeah, secretaries were made millionaires overnight because they had options. And it was unusual. Nobody had seen that before. Nobody had understood that before, that was even possible. It was always, well, the executives made all the millions and the secretaries are there looking there helping clean up their day at 7 o'clock at night. No, Michael Dell put that on his head. And so, that's a variant of this rule about, decide accordingly that these people, it's great to say, well, 8 out of 10 companies are going to fail. Well, those are people paying their mortgage, taxes, their health and life and auto insurance, trying to fund their retirement and put their kid through college. So you better make sure that you're working on behalf of your employees if you're ever going to have a great organization.
And I love that effort because we all are doing our part, whether we're the secretaries, the executives, the janitor, to make the company successful and to be, making decisions accordingly that look at the people who are there, makes the environment so much healthier for everybody as well. So I find that to be amazing. And I think that runs into Like how do we create environments that are collaborative and that allow us to have that success as well?
That is exactly. It's all about creating the environment, creating that, the energy inside the magnetic field. It's critical.
Absolutely. Do you have any rules that kind of like work around that?
Yeah, one is something I borrowed from Ben Franklin. I should say, when the full list of rules, if I took them from somebody, I always cite it. So this one is Ben Franklin's. He said in the midst of the before early, during this the Revolutionary War, he said, "We must hang together, or we most assuredly will hang apart." Okay. There's always in business, there's always just high stress times, end of quarter, end of year, you're hammering on a big deal and people start, fussing at each other. It's like, no, don't forget the importance that we're blessed with an opportunity here. We must hang together or we're going to hang apart. If this thing blows apart, we're all out looking for new jobs. Nobody's having any fun making money. You're not going to have the GI Joe with Kung Fu grip at Christmas. Okay. So work together as a team. There's a variant to this, which I had from an Air Force general, which is also one of the rules, which is I am not the problem. You are not the problem. Define the problem and solve that. Do not work each other. Okay. It's a variant to this where, and so oftentimes you'll be in these meetings and whether it's a sales strategy or a technology approach in a tactical situation, people start chipping at each other. It's like, okay, the problem is not you, Don, and it's not me. I think we should use this strategy. You should that strategy. Which strategy do we think is going to be better? When you frame it that way, then it makes it much easier to hang together. And again, this speaks to the day-to-day manager of the business and how you cause people to work together and reduce some of that natural friction, right? I mean, they say software is an industry of creative destruction, and that is entirely true. But what you want to do is you want to make sure you channel that creative destruction towards positive things and not towards people stabbing each other in the back.
Oh, we've all been in environments where we could definitely have used this rule, and I see it as part of our own growth as people to purposely choose to solve the problems instead of trying to solve the people. So I want to switch into something that's more like tactical. There's a number of sales principles that you have that we haven't kind of had a chance to cross into, but like would love to get your insights there as well.
Yeah. So the first one is, ironically, I got it from Dr. Laura Schlesinger, right, a TV radio host. And she said, any diet will work, just stick with it. And I added to it, I said, that works for sales methodologies too, right? I see this with companies all the time. They think, well, if we could just get, the right sales methodology, or even worse, they come up with their own, right? Listen, there's Pain Chain, there's Miller Hyman, there's a lot of great methodology out there. Pick one and stick with it. Just recognize that a sales methodology does not generate revenue. What a sales methodology does is it makes sure that you're putting the right person in front of the right target at the right time with the correct message in the right sequence to move the business forward on a cost effective basis. What does that all mean? That means you want an inside salesperson calling 50 people a day at the front end of a sales process, and you want your CFO talking to the CFO of a target company at the end of the sales process. Okay. And structuring all that in the middle is very important. So not only do you have a greater likelihood of hitting the number, but you do so in a cost effective way. So that is why you have a sales methodology. But too many companies look at it and say, well, if I have a better sales methodology, I tweak the methodology, I'm going to be more successful. No, you're pretty much just going to antagonize your sales team. Is going to get up and walk out the door out of frustration. And so pick one, stick with it, but recognize why you have it in the first place. Again, why is the foundation of everything. Why do we have a sales methodology? That's it. Sales is expensive, and the company depends on doing it correctly, successfully, and in the most economic fashion possible.
I think you're hitting on a really strong point of the intention of like why people are doing things. So amazing.
Countless times, companies make the mistake of thinking, "Oh, we just need to change this or that aspect of the sales methodology," and again, people go back to just working to the contract. Oh, you want me to file this 3 reports every Thursday and the 4th one on Friday. Okay. You're not no longer unlocking their potential as God-given creatures with, 10 or 15 years of business and sales experience. You're just turning them into a unit of work which may or may not work. And if it fails, it's your responsibility, not theirs, because you told them how to do their job or tried.
So like one of the things that we see is With larger companies, they're referred to as ships and they're kind of like moving along. Smaller companies are speedboats. I think we're getting into an age of, many services companies are a collection of other companies as well in different services. So it feels more like a bunch of jet skis trying to go in the same direction. Are there any rules that you have around alignment?
One of it is the world runs on the free exchange of favors between friends. Don't keep a close score. And this is another one that people always come back to me with. It's like, wow, Bill, that's right. And this is one of mine. Okay. So I didn't get this from Benjamin Franklin or from a radio talk show host or from an Air Force general. I actually wrote this down because it occurred to me that if you have a well run organization and they're working well as a team, some days you're going to need help and other days you're going to give help. And a well-run company runs on the free exchange of favors between friends. So don't keep a close score on that. And that does help to break down because so oftentimes you hear so much about organizational barriers, right? Between marketing and channel and sales and consulting, and everybody wants to run their own little world. But look, guys, I need a favor from the consultant to get me into this particular company so I can make the pitch. We don't want you to be a salesperson. We want you to be the objective partner to this customer, but nonetheless, we need to grow the business. Can you help me? Okay. Marketing goes to sales and says, guys, I've got a conference. I need 3 people to cover this booth so we can, talk to people. Okay, we'll help. So it's the way it speaks to how you break down the barriers between the different organizations within a company. And sales says to product, I need you, I need somebody to come out and explain to a deep technical person at this customer how our product it works and which direction it's going in the years to come. Okay, I'll do that. Right. It's not my job, but I'll help you out because I know we need to do that for the company. That free exchange of favors between friends. It makes life more enjoyable for everybody. And it takes you out of your usual grind. If you're in marketing, you got to go to a sales call. If you're in consulting, you go to a sales call. If it's, your development, you're going out and talking to customers. That might not be something you've done, something you are comfortable with, but you might find you enjoy it and you might make a new friend who's really grateful to you for having helped them out.
Honestly, a great lesson to learn about giving and being there for your friends. So
And a tight one with that is, and this speaks to not just the horizontal integration, but the vertical integration, right? And that says loyalty flows in 2 directions, right? One of my jokes, this is not one of Bill's rules, but I often say that listening to a software executive talk about corporate loyalty is like listening to an escort talk about chastity. And you see all these massive layoffs and, again, it's the creative destruction of the software industry. But if you're asking for loyalty from somebody, you better darn well be giving loyalty to somebody. And so that's why this speaks to loyalty goes in 2 directions, right? It's not just the employee has to be loyal to the company, the management executives, they have to be loyal to their employees. Now, we all have to work for the profit motive. We all work on behalf of the shareholders and their best interest. That said, however, it's important that, within a company that loyalty cannot be seen as going only one way. And so this is a vertical discussion versus the horizontal free exchange of favors.
I think it's a great point to bring up. And I know in the 80s, when Boeing laid off a good portion of their staff, HBR did a study on the people who stayed versus the people that left. One of the key outcomes of this study was that the people who ended up leaving were happier. The people who stayed were waiting for the next shoe to drop. Like, when is the next layoff going to come? And so that feeling of loyalty, I think, was lost in Boeing, and we can see how that's played out over the last 40 some years.
Look, I'm a big fan of getting human capital into the most effective positions possible. And it's one of the magic elements of the software industry where, people do move and the opportunity's got to be there and you can maximize somebody's efficiency. What I have seen that really bothers me, however, is oftentimes you'll see executives in technology who want to sort of pad their resume. They want to have a larger P&L and L, and they want to have more people FTEs working for them because it sets them up for the next job. And they don't want to do the hard work of saying, do I actually need this many people right now? And so the least little hiccup in the business, and all of a sudden you're laying off tens or dozens or hundreds of people for no reason other than the fact that you hired them out of your own ego. And we see that time and again. Maybe that's why I haven't run a multi-thousand person organization, but I have always looked at it very carefully and said, how much opportunity? What's our 4-quarter rolling funnel? What is its rate of growth? What's our average sales price? If I hire one salesperson, then I need zero point 0.8 FTEs for an SE. I need 0.25 inside sales. I need zero point 0.5 or zero point 0.2 marketing sales. I need X amount of budget, and I can justify that. It's never been, well, I want to go from being a senior vice president to an executive vice president. No, and again, when employees see that you're using either the first rule of I want as many people working for me as I can because I want to look like a good-looking genius versus a thoughtful approach to the business, and they realize, and this happens in software all the time, they're not going to have 5 people dropped in the office around them and everybody's going to fight for a certain number of scraps, but instead you're invested in their success. Then you have a whole different outlook towards the company and the business on behalf of the people who work there.
Oh, it's fantastic. Bill, I got to say, I always love our interactions and I've enjoyed the going over your rules. I know you said start with your why and understand what it is about yourself that is important. So your why is really what delivered these set of rules. And I can imagine that a number of our listeners are coming up with their own rules they may borrow from yours. Is there any other insights that you have around the creation of your set of rules?
It's been very helpful to me because I go into so many fix-it situations, and the opportunity for people to see, something entirely different, something that makes sense to them, right? So oftentimes people are given the mushroom treatment during times of transition. It's like, okay, now this is how we're going to operate, and we're going to move forward this way, and it gives everybody an opportunity to consider, you know, do I want to do this? Do I like this? And you start to build that attraction. So we're in software again. I love the creative destruction, but what troubles me these days is we tend to turn people into something called a unit of work, right? So that was the problem with socialism back in the late 1800s. We devalue the individual; they become a unit of work in a cog in a wheel. We run that risk when you look at only 10 or 15, 20% of pre-IPO companies are successful. You run that risk of turning people into a unit of work and devaluing them as individuals, and they know that. And so even if they're working somewhere, you don't have their heart and mind, right? They're going through the motions, and work from home has only made that much worse. So keeping in mind, how do I really value the contributions of the employees as individuals, and structuring systems that fairly manage them and allow executives to operate with full control of the business, but also unleashing the potential of their staff is critical.
Fantastic. I got to say, Bill, thank you so much for being on today. It's been a real pleasure again.
Pleasure's mine. Thanks so much. Good to see you again.
Thank you for tuning into The Human Code, sponsored by Findustries, where we harness AI to elevate your business. By improving operational efficiency and accelerating growth, we turn opportunities into reality. Let Findustries be your guide to AI mastery, making success inevitable. Explore how at findustries.co.